Hello, and thank you for joining us here at No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I'm happy to be here with you today. We have a very interesting show today because we're going to go a little bit backwards in time and a little bit forwards in time. We're going to be talking about some very interesting ideas, and we hope that we're going to be wrong. Let me say that again. We hope we're going to be wrong. Now, if you've never seen the program before, we engage in long-form political commentary here. Yes, that's why we're called No Soundbites Allowed. So if you've been following the program, we've been doing this for 10 years now, talking about the issues of the day. And from time to time, we do like to make predictions. And very often we have found that our predictions tend to be correct. Sometimes they're off by when exactly it happens, but usually most of what we predict does happen. You can look back in time and you can see that back in November of 2018, we predicted that Kamala Harris would be the 2020 vice presidential nominee. We're right. Now, the way we got there, not exactly how we thought, but it did happen. Back in February, we had talked about the COVID-19 coronavirus. And we mentioned that it was not the bubonic plague, that this was not the Black Death, and that it would be very survivable. We had no idea that the survivability would be as high as 99.5%, but we were right. We also mentioned, I believe it was in March or April, when we first predicted that the economy was going to be devastated. When we mentioned that we expected upwards of 20% of all businesses in the United States could potentially close. And in fact, we've got that one right. 20% of businesses have closed forever. But that wasn't the only kind of predictions that we have made. In fact, we've also been talking a lot about what's coming up now, something that's been really bothering people, and we're hearing more and more of it as we get closer to the 2020 election. Let me explain. Back in, it was July of 2018, we first posed the question, what is driving the nation potentially towards a second civil war? A second civil war. Now, 2 years ago, nobody was talking about that. It wasn't in anyone's mind, really. But we believed we saw that perhaps there was a spark, something that was going towards that direction. And we wanted to talk about it. In fact, we did speak about it when we spoke on July 6th in our podcast that is a second civil war our future? How did we get here? And we said in that podcast.
October 5th of 2014, you can find the article in the Washington Times talking about Michael Savage warning of a second civil war in a post-constitutional society. That's the title of the article. And it goes into his discussion about his expectation that there is a civil war that is coming and that we are very much in a Cold War status at the moment, that there's already battle lines being drawn throughout the nation, separating the progressive ideals versus pretty much everyone else in America and the conservative ideals. And so there's that separation, that division of people.
Division of people. A separation along lines of progressives versus everyone else. Democratic socialists against everyone else. BLM, Antifa versus everyone else. That's the theme we saw back in 2018. And we first told you we could see this happen. It is something that could happen. Now, at the time, no one really paid attention to the idea. No one thought that that was credible. Michael Savage did, but almost no one else did. They said it's not something that could happen in America. There's no way that we could see the divisions because of politics separating people that much. And then we got to 2020. And the fact is, the divisions, not only did they exist, they got worse. A lot worse. You may recall that there was the George Floyd protests. Rightly so. We agree that what happened to George Floyd should never have happened, that that was a crime. And we are happy to see that the officer involved is being punished according to the law. He's going through the process. And if proven guilty, will be appropriately punished. But then we saw the progressives take it further. We saw that the far left, the Democratic Socialists, weren't satisfied. They wanted more. And the means they found was doing protests and riots, violence. That would be able to move them forward and to force people to finally capitulate to their will, to do what they want. And that, well, I can't say culminated, but one of the peaks in 2020 was, of course, what happened in Seattle. And we all know that in Seattle, a neighborhood was completely taken over. Something that would, in any other time in America, would have been considered treasonous, terroristic. But a group of individuals from the far left disbanded the police, removed the police, and captured several blocks, a neighborhood in Seattle. They ruled with warlords and violence, which culminated in the death of 2 children. And of course, that Seattle Chaz, as you can see, is winding up not just in millions of dollars of damages to Seattle, but also a $3 billion lawsuit because of the loss of the life of those children, as it rightly should. Now, that wasn't the only thing that happened. Of course, we also saw that there was a mayoral candidate in Maryland, Baltimore, a friend of mine, Pastor Shannon Wright, who I support completely, a black Republican woman running for the mayor of Baltimore, and she was the victim of racist attacks. Something that we've been seeing across this nation, in fact, something that I've had to deal with myself. Racist attacks, especially against blacks who are conservatives and Republicans, because the far left, BLM, Antifa, the Democratic Socialists, don't believe in anyone disagreeing with them. It's sad, it's troubling, and it's dangerous. And in fact, the rest of the left also started recognizing that this was a very troubling trend. In fact, Thomas Friedman, in speaking on CNN, mentioned that he believed in September 25th that America was heading towards a second civil war. And he said, he's speaking with Anderson Cooper, and he mentioned that he's terrified to find himself ending his career as a journalist covering America's potential second civil war in its history. Anderson Cooper asks, do you really believe that? And the answer is, I think what happened in the last few days is a 6-alarm fire. That's Thomas Friedman. And I'll tell you what, I think he's right. And it isn't just the last few days in September. This is something that has been boiling over since 2018. BLM has been around for 4 years, 5 years, growing and like a vine just twisting into America. We now see that you can't speak out in favor of police. We have individuals that believe they have to apologize for being born a certain color. That gender identity politics has invaded every aspect of our lives, and that anyone who speaks out against it is considered a traitor, a racist, or some other negative. In fact, we were talking about it a bit when we were talking about Portland, an area, a city that had been over 100 days of continuous, nonstop rioting by the far left, by BLM and Antifa, because they want more power. In fact, we saw that we had said at that time.
Think about that. And do you think that these individuals in BLM, these individuals in Antifa, are going to stop?
Do you think they're going to stop? Obviously, they won't stop if we see President Trump reelected. Even Biden has said that, do you really think the violence will stop? But here's the thing. The violence isn't going to stop with Biden elected either. He's no better. He doesn't even want to acknowledge the violence. And if he's not willing to even acknowledge the violence until it affects his polling, do you think he's going to do anything about when he gets elected and they continue? And the news media continues to tell you, no, it's mostly peaceful. Think about it. Do you think BLM, Antifa, the violent rioters and looters in those organizations, and its charter, its whole message, do you think they're going to stop demanding that police are completely defunded and the riots based on that idea just because Joe Biden's in office? Or do you think they're going to keep going? Because they're getting away with it. Because the news media has supported them. What's Joe Biden going to do? Is he going to suddenly send in troops? Well, he doesn't advocate that. Is he going to defund the cities, as President Trump has stated he wants to do? Joe Biden is against that. How is he actually going to stop them? Well, the only answer I can see is they're going to continue to riot because they know he's not going to do any of those things. So what he will do is capitulate. He will give them what they want. He will appease them. That's what Joe Biden's going to do. And when Joe Biden does that, it's only going to get worse. Only going to get worse. That's right. And we were speaking about that in September. And I'll stand by that again. I'll say it again. It will only get worse. Because even if, as we expect, President Trump were to win by 55%, within an hour of that announcement on November 4th, 21 days from today, you'll see riots spontaneously appear across the nation. They're not spontaneous. The left has been planning this. But I'm willing to tell you, as we said before, we'll say it again, even if Joe Biden were to win, the left is still going to go forward. We're still going to see the progressives, the far left, come out and riot anyway, because Joe Biden is capitulating. Kamala Harris is part of their team. Kamala Harris is part of those who have helped to pay for everyone who's been arrested to get out on bail, to continue to make more riots and destroy more property. They're on their side. They're going to do what BLM, the far left, the Democratic Socialists want. Whether it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Green New Deal, or whether it's a city in Austin or in Kenosha or New York City or Dallas, across the nation, Rochester, they're going to do what they say. And because of that, they're going to do even more. And if you oppose that, if you think that's a bad idea, if you think that that's something that you should stand up to, well, the left is already making their case there. Just like in Lancaster, PA, which we covered, where an officer had 4 seconds to decide on how to protect his life from a madman chasing after him with a butcher's knife. And that resulted in Lancaster becoming the site of even more riots. And the Lancaster police chief who helped to stop those riots, when his wife made a post on Facebook, as is her First Amendment right, about the election, the result was he was fired. He was forced into retirement, into resignation, because the left didn't feel like that's what she should have done. And that's the position that many people today have been forced into. If you speak up, you will be punished. If you don't conform, you will be punished. If you don't believe that, look no further than to Amy Coney Barrett, as she's going through the Supreme Court justice nomination process. And Democrat after Democrat is asking her to conform. They're making it difficult for her. They're trying to stop her. And they're trying to make her conform. And the more she doesn't, the more they're trying to draw out the process and to draw blood. It's not working, but they want what they want. The left must get what they want, or else all of us must pay the price. And that's kind of scary. But it's even worse than you think, because when I say that they have to get what they want, they don't care if it's even coming from the left. They will eat their own. Matter of fact, as proven by Project Veritas, on October 13th in Colorado, the Democratic operative Chris Jacks is recorded on video. And in the investigation by Project Veritas, and I know there's a few people who say, well, my Project Veritas, we can't trust them. Let me say very clearly, the fact is, Project Veritas has never lost a lawsuit over one of its investigations ever, in any state, to any degree. They have been verified and proven to be correct in each of their investigations. And in this one, going over Chris Jacks in Colorado, they find out that he, as a leader of a far left organization, is looking for Joe Biden to cooperate with his radical agenda or face protests that will trap him in the White House. In fact, he goes even a little further. He mentions that Joe Biden, as long as there is a progressive legislation that comes across his desk, I am confident we, meaning the left, can occupy his house. We know where he'll live. And yeah, he wants to vote to veto Medicare for all. Let him veto it. He's never leaving that house again without protests. Mr. Jacks, Chris Jacks, mentions that the previous 4 years of violent protests have been practice. When you start thinking about that, that tells you a lot about what's going on. 4 years of practice. The left has been looking to get its own way, to get ready, to be violent, to take on cities, to create riots, to put people into fear and terror. If you want to say what is the fuel, what is behind the potential of a second civil war that we see individuals speaking about on CNN, something that we saw in 2018, it's fear, it's intimidation, it's threats of violence, it's the willingness, as Chris Jacks goes into, the willingness to use guillotines and to cause violence against people. Now, you may disagree with some of this, or you may want more details, and you can go into the description on YouTube, and you'll be able to see links to everything that we've spoken about. And we will advise you, check it out. Now, I hope we're going to be wrong. We hope that Chris Jacks is wrong, that he's overestimating the power of the left, that he is overestimating the willingness of the progressive left like Antifa and Black Lives Matters and the Democratic Socialists to go to war with our fellow Americans. We want to believe that they aren't willing to destroy the Constitution and then replace it with a lawless society based on communism. But it seems like there's a reason to be concerned. We know the left wants to have a riot. We know the left wants to have control of this nation, both the Supreme Court, which they are more than willing to pack, and the control of our cities, which they are more than willing to burn down. Is it such a far reach to say that if they don't get the election that they want, that they'll go even further? So again, we started off this with one very simple statement. We hope we are wrong. I want to see this prediction never happen. There shouldn't be a second civil war. But it's quite possible in 21 days, we're going to see. If there's a spark that this nation has been waiting for to make the decision, I believe the 2020 election is that spark. And hopefully, it's a spark that'll never take light. Be prepared. Be aware. And most importantly, be an American. And when I say that, I mean, we don't all have to agree. We don't all have to believe the same thing. We don't all have to say the same things. That's not what America's about. We should be able to have differences of ideas, to be able to have discussions about what we passionately believe. And we should be able to walk away from that without violence, without intimidation and fear, and forcing others against their will to do what we say. That's what America is. And that's when America's at its best. So I call on the far left. I call on Antifa and Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow and BLM and the Democratic Socialists. Be Americans. Be able to disagree. Be able to accept that we compromise and that we can make America better together, not apart. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you think we're wrong. We look forward to hearing what you think. Are we approaching a second civil war? Is that something that could happen because of the 2020 election? Is that something that's going to stop you from voting? Or is it going to make sure that you vote? And does it make sure that you're going to vote for President Trump as opposed to President Biden? Only you can answer those questions. We look forward to hearing your answers. And we hope that you have a great day. Thank you.